Walt Disney World 2021 on property versus off property, and which is best for you. That's the story this week. Welcome back to the Bears Den. My name is Chris, and on this channel you are going to get weekly stories to help you with your next Walt Disney World visit. So if you're new here, consider subscribing, and let's get into the story this week. I'm down here at the Walt Disney World Boardwalk, enjoying some of the resorts that are here close to Epcot. And just real quick, one day you will be back. Oh, I miss Jelly Rolls. I figured that this was a good opportunity to have a pretty important discussion with you, because if you're planning a trip to Walt Disney World in 2021 or at any time really, one of the biggest questions that you need to answer is, where are you going to stay? And I've talked about this and mentioned it before, but to get to the bottom of this question, to really answer it, the first thing that you need to answer is, are you going to stay on Walt Disney World property, or are you going to stay off Walt Disney World property? And in this video, I'm going to cover some of those things that I think are important for you to consider when you're trying to make that choice between staying on property versus off property when you're coming to Walt Disney World. On my first trip to Walt Disney World, I actually stayed right here at Calypso Key. It was me, my three brothers, my sister, and my future sister-in-law. We had never been to Walt Disney World. We didn't know much about visiting Walt Disney World, and to be honest, we were on a pretty small budget. Pricing is definitely going to be one of the biggest things that you need to consider when you're looking at and deciding between staying on property or off property on your next visit to Walt Disney World. You are going to spend more money if you decide to stay at a Walt Disney World resort on Walt Disney World property. For example, when I recently looked up prices here at Calypso Key, I was able to get a one-bedroom villa with a king bed in the master room for only $88 a night on the weekend. The closest that I could get to that price at a Walt Disney World resort was at Disney's All-Star Movies Resort for $160 a night in a standard room. You are going to pay a premium if you decide to stay at a Walt Disney World resort on Walt Disney World property. And a benefit to staying off property is that you're going to be able to get more out of your stay on a smaller budget. But there are definitely some perks to paying that premium price to stay at a Disney resort. For example, preference when you're booking park pass reservations, or when they return, the ability to book fast passes further out in advance than guests who are not staying on property. But one of the biggest benefits to staying at a Walt Disney World resort, staying on property at Walt Disney World, is actually the free transportation that's available from your resort, directly from your resort to the parks or Disney Springs, or really anywhere around Walt Disney World. If you're staying off property, your only options for transportation are really going to be those paid options like Uber, Lyft, or a taxi, unless you have your own car. But then you're going to have to pay for parking at the theme parks anyway. Now, of course, once you've made it to Walt Disney World property, however you decide to get here, if you're staying off property, you can always use those free transportation options to get around the resort. But it's definitely nice to have that free transportation directly from your resort to the other areas of Walt Disney World without having to worry about how you're going to get to those free options. In the end, you are definitely going to spend more if you decide to stay on Walt Disney World property at a Walt Disney World resort. But if you're looking for a budget option, if you're looking to stretch your budget as far as possible, then I would definitely suggest looking at staying off property rather than on property. Something else that you're definitely going to want to consider when you're trying to choose between off property and on property for your next Walt Disney World visit is the number and variety of options available. I have to say, parking at the beach club is definitely not the easiest. There are more options in both number and variety when you decide to stay off Walt Disney World property, from massive hotel chains like Sheraton and Marriott and Hilton to more regional hotel chains as well as Airbnb and other vacation rental options. Staying off property definitely means that there is more possibility for your stay. On Walt Disney World property, there are 31 total Walt Disney World resorts, and that's it. These 31 Walt Disney World resorts include 6 value resorts, 5 moderate resorts, 8 deluxe resorts, and 12 deluxe villa resorts, which are the Disney Vacation Club resorts. Just so you know, a value resort is what Disney considers its budget option. The moderate resorts are the more middle of the road options. The deluxe resorts are obviously the higher end resorts. And the deluxe villas or the Disney Vacation Club resorts we'll get into another time. So yes, when you're staying on Walt Disney World property, there is definitely less for you to choose from, but you have to remember, these are all Disney resorts, and they all have that just little something extra that only a Disney resort can have. The service is different, the theming is always Disney, and you constantly get to be immersed in that Disney storytelling. One more thing that I want you to think about while you're trying to make this decision between on property and off property. Are you the type of person that needs to have Disney theming thrown in your face 24 hours a day? Or would you rather be able to take a break each night from all things Disney so that you're excited to go to the parks each day of your trip? Another benefit to staying off property is the ability to not be so immersed in all of the theming at Walt Disney World. Disney is the greatest storyteller in the world, but I know some people who don't necessarily enjoy having the theming of Disney thrown in their face 24/7. Staying off property will give you a break from all of the Disney theming when it's time to take a break, so that you're going to be excited to go to the parks each and every day of your visit. But if you're like me and you need to be immersed in the Disney storytelling throughout your trip because you love all things Disney, maybe you even have it like tattooed on your arm, there is nothing like being part of that storytelling for every minute of every day of your trip. So on property versus off property, and the answer is really going to be that this depends on you. What is going to be right for you is not going to be right for me or for anyone else. You need to make the most of your trip by choosing what is going to let you make the most of your trip. Like this video. If you like this video, subscribe and click that bell to see more videos just like this one. And remember, there's a great big beautiful tomorrow.